Today I'm going to show you an app called DIM, which is short for Destiny Item Manager. This app has saved me hundreds and hundreds of hours. In fact, back in Destiny 1, they used to have a website that you could literally see how much time you'd saved traveling to and from the tower just by using their app to transfer stuff between the vault and your character. I don't think I would play Destiny without DIM. So if you've never heard of it before, this should help you a lot. But even if you have heard of it, I'm going to show you some tools and methods to use it that I think will be very beneficial to even those who have used this thing since the day it was created. So let's get into the number one question that I get asked a lot, and that is how I get my build to have exact numbers like this: 50, 101 with only one wasted stat, 80, 60, 82. This is a total of 41 tiers on my character. And with some of the new Iron Banner armor I just got, I can actually get my intellect up to 7, which will put me up to 42. Now this is what it's going to look like once you've installed it. And yes, I have saved a ridiculous amount of junk in here just so that I can show some of these filtering features to you guys. So I do not recommend running your vault at 500 for several weeks. It is awful. For starters, there's actually two versions of DIM. Now I have an orange one and a blue one. The orange one is the official published version and the blue one is their beta. And the only difference is that they'll test out all of their new features in the blue one first to get rid of all of the kinks and bugs. And then once they feel those are ready, they'll push them to the orange version. Now technically this is actually a browser application. So if you Google DIM, you should see two links pop up. They both send you to their website, but I'm going to click on the second one because that's their main official page. The launch app button will give you that orange official one, and then the beta link gives you the blue one. You need to authorize your account through Bungie. This is perfectly fine. You choose your platform, your information, and once it opens up, it'll actually open in Chrome. And how to get it the way I showed it, you just got to click those three lines in the top left-hand corner and hit install app. A pop-up will show up, you hit install, and bingo, there it is. It'll open up on your start bar. At this point in time, I just right-click it and hit pin to the taskbar, and I'm good to go. If you accidentally didn't do that and didn't know how to get that back, just go to your regular Chrome browser, right-click where you would normally have your bookmarks, hit the show apps shortcut, you click on that apps button, and that's all of your Chrome apps, which is where DIM will be. To the folks who play on console, don't worry, I got you covered. There are two links I've included in the description below, one for Android and one for iPhone, on exactly how to install this as an app on your phone in case you don't have a computer next to you while you play. And on that same note, there's a really slick way to make this in your Steam application. So if you're playing with one monitor, you can use all these features without ever alt tabbing. But we're at like 2 minutes already, so we're going to dive in right now, and then I'll show you that piece later on in the video. We're currently on inventory, but we're actually going to start on the Loadout Optimizer, and I'll explain why in a second. After that, we're going to come back to inventory so I can show you some tips and tricks, touch on progress, vendors, and records, and then last but not least, we'll do organizer. The reason why I want to start out with Loadout Optimizer is because to craft those perfect builds, you want as much gear as possible. There's a reason why I have so much armor in here and I haven't deleted it. I said earlier that I've saved some junk to show you how some of the filters work, but for the most part, actually, because finding perfect stat distributions is all about getting lucky with combining those 4 pieces of gear and their random stats. So I'll always tell people to do their Loadout Optimizer before cleaning their vault. The worst thing that you can ever do is clean out your entire vault and then start to learn about the Loadout Optimizer. By default, it lands on the character that you have equipped, and it'll automatically tell you what the highest tier number is. Now, this is T31, and I said I could get up to T42, right? And that's because the Loadout Optimizer works off of your base stats. It doesn't take mods into account because it knows that you can put a recovery mod on any piece of armor. So why would it waste time mixing all of that stuff up? It essentially gives you a clean slate and tells you, hey, this is your base. Now, just remember, you can add a mod here, here. You can add one here. That's already 5 right there. Then you have things like Powerful Friends, which is another +2. You have things like Radiant Light, which is another +2. And then you have this beautiful check filter right here that says Assume Masterwork Stats. So let's go ahead and do that. Bingo. So before it was only showing me my best current build as of today if I had no material to masterwork my stuff. But now it's telling me I can have up to a tier 32. Again, that's base. So adding all of these 9 would put it to a 41. And then on top of that, with the fragments that I use on stasis, I can get another +2. So I could actually technically have a 43 build. I just don't really want to do it with this piece of exotic armor. So we're going to start with this section down here. Let's say I want to see what my best possible Dune Marchers build is. Most people would think to click pin item, and then they would go down and pick the exact Dune Marchers that they want to use. But I have a lot of Dune Marchers. I have 3 down here, 1 over here, and 2 up here. Instead of using pin item or pinning equipped, I actually like to go select perk. I go down to the leg armor section, and I know that linear actuators is the perk for my Dune Marchers. So I click on on that and I hit select perks. The next section I'm showing you is where all the magic happens right here. These are your 6 gear stats and you can play around with these a lot. So first and foremost, with this build, it has 6 mobility. And I've come to realize with the stasis cooldowns that I need to maximize my gear's stats into the other categories. So really what would be ideal is if this was 4 and then these other 2 were sent over to recovery, let's say. So what I can do is I can actually limit my mobility to 4. So now it's going to reorganize all of these different combinations and prioritize them the way I want to see them. Mobility is now going to be a maximum of 4. And I know that the T31 tells me that my overall build, even though it has 2 less mobility, still has the same total across the board. Next up is my personal preference of 10 recovery. And in order to get 10 recovery, I know that I'm going to have to use some recovery mods, but recovery costs 4, intellect costs 5, and then the rest only costs 3 affinity. So if I can maximize using the gear that has high recovery and intellect, I know that I can maximize my affinity slots inside my gear by using smaller mods for gear stats. So what I like to do now is I like to set my recovery to 7 or higher. I can see that there's a lot of combos here. T31, T31, T31. There's a bunch here. So I don't really want to have to scroll through and look at every single one of these, right? So what I'll do now is I can actually drag these around and reprioritize them and say, hey, look, I want intellect to be the most important stat in my build. So keep organizing by maximum tier, but start with the highest intellect ones. And then maybe I say recovery is going to be my number 2 because that costs 4 affinity. That mobility stat that was maximized at 4, since that's got a pretty narrow window, maybe I'll move that to the bottom. Resilience I might not be crazy about, so I'll move that down here. Now we know the character screen shows mobility, resilience, recovery, discipline, intellect, and strength, right? So at this point in time, I know I'm going to use powerful friends. So my mobility is actually going to end up being 5. My resilience always goes up by 1 using stasis, so that's going to be a 6. My recovery is sitting at 8, but I know I'm going to use 2 out of my 5 potential mod slots for recovery, so that's going to be a 10, and I've got 3 mod slots that I can still use. My strength goes up by 1 as well using stasis, but that'll put it at 4, but then on top of that, I'm going to use radiant light, which adds 20 just like powerful friends. So my strength is actually going to end up at 6. For discipline, 5 is pretty low, so maybe I go ham and use the other 3 mod slots that I have on my gear available and pump that sucker up to 8. That leaves my intellect at 7 down here, and that is a quick way of showing you how to get a 5, 6, 10, 8, 7, 6. A really good example of where I need to do this quickly is when I'm trying to make builds for videos. Taking the Heart of Inmost Light chest piece for Titan, I knew that the exotic perk works all around your discipline, strength, and resilience. And so for me, I wanted to find ways to dump all of my discipline and strength out and send it into these other gear stat categories, especially into resilience. I tossed on the perk right here, and then I go to strength and hit ignore. I can go to discipline and hit ignore. What that's going to do for me now is split this number into 2. It's going to reprioritize all of the builds across these 4 stats that I actually care about. So what it's telling me right now is that a tier 24 is the best I can do across these, which happens to add up to a tier 29. And that's because of the discipline of 3 and strength of 2. 24 and 5 makes 29. The one feature I'd love to see added is a filter system for that total. Like I'd love to be able to say, show me all of the tier 30 builds specifically. So in other words, I might be happier with 23 and 7 than 24 and 5. Down here is a perfect example. It is worth scrolling down sometimes. Here we have the same T24 and this one's a T30. It has the same 24 across those 4, but now I've got 6 here. Why wouldn't I pick this? And why wasn't this showing at the top? Well, the reason is because of that sorting that I set on there. Up here, I said I wanted intellect and recovery to be my top 2. Well, I've got 9 intellect and 6 recovery. Go up to here, I've got 9 intellect and 7 recovery. So it thinks that I'd rather have this than this one down here. Now, just before we go into the inventory section, remember that there's this bar at the top that helps you filter things. Let's say you don't want any armor that's sunset to show up and affect your results here. Well, you can go in here and type not:sunset, processing, and bingo. Just by applying that filter, it's now removed any combinations in here that used sunset gear. Oh, and the last thing I'll show you is, let's say you are scrolling down till you find a little bit better stat distribution that you like maybe here, this one has 5 discipline and 4 strength instead of 4 discipline and 5 strength. You can hit the save loadout button, and then at the bottom, you can name it whatever. Or you can say, no, I don't care what class item I have. You can X that out and just save the 4 pieces of armor, and then I'll show you where it lands in your inventory. I almost forgot, this little triangle exclamation mark warning sign. It says to get accurate results, please remove any mods with negative or conditional stat effects. For example, that that seasonal radiant light mod or powerful friends add 20 strength or 20 mobility to your character. And this is saying that having those things on your armor messes around with their code to try and figure out what your total tiers would be. I think other things like charge harvester or maybe even stasis mess these things up. I'm not 1000% sure on that. So what I'll say is that I actually haven't run into any issues. Thus far, I've been able to ignore this error message and all of these numbers have always worked out the same on here as in game without me needing to remove these mods. But obviously they put that there for a reason. So there's clearly some cases where dim might show you one thing and your game shows you another. So if you want to play it safe, you'll have to remove those conditional gear stat mods in game and then do the loadout optimizer. Okay, we're heading into section 2, which is all about the cool things that you can do in the inventory tab. But before we do that, I just want to mention that if you're ever struggling with any of this, I highly recommend you join the Discord. We've been growing pretty quickly, up to about 600 of us since the last video, and there's a really good mix of PvP and PvE. So I'd love to chat with you regardless of whether or not it's about dim, and I hope to see you. It shows you your characters at the top, and we're going to come back to that. Then it's got your inventory and your postmaster, your weapons. Then you've got gear going a bit further. Neat little tip here for those of you that are arguing about what certain perks are on what certain trees. You can actually click on these things and it'll show you all of the perk options. Like here's a description of the Sentinel shield. Under that, you got your ghosts, emblems, ships, all of this good stuff, your inventory, shaders, yada, yada, yada. But back to the juicy stuff. I'm going to zoom in even more, and I want you to pay attention to these numbers here. It tells you your maximum total power, which is a makeup of your character's total power plus the artifact bonus. When you hover over them, it actually tells you the highest possible piece of gear or weapon that your character can have. And then it even gives you this tooltip to help you with power balancing, which I did a video on at the beginning of Beyond Light. Let's say I'm curious what the best version of the Rage Shotgun is that I have. All I gotta do is click on one of them. There's all of the weapon stats, both the ones that are shown in-game and the hidden stats that they don't show you in-game, like aim assistance. It tells you what perks you had available on that gun. Someday, it would be unbelievable if they could also show you the perks that could have rolled on the gun, not just what landed on your gun. But there's another website for that that's also incredible, and a story for another day. You can do things like tagging these items. Maybe you think this thing is junk, but ultimately what I wanna show you is the compare tool. So I'm going to click on that, and it's going to bring up every single heritage shotgun that I have. It lays them out with all of their stats next to each other, and then it even color codes them based on their comparisons. So here you can see the 89s are in blue, which is really good. They're the best out of the others when it comes to range. This one has the highest handling at 78, so it's showing you blue, but this one's quite close at 77, so it's showing you yellow. Anytime I've got a lot of guns, like one of my next videos coming up, look at the steady hand. I've got all these steady hands that I've been testing like crazy in Crucible, and I found which one feels the absolute best that I want to make a video on. And the only way I could do this without pulling my hair out was by using this tooltip to figure out what the max stability roll I could get, or the max range, or what guns have similar stats but different perks, so I could figure out what felt better there. If you really want to go ham, you can then compare it to even more things like all of your hand cannons, or you can say, no, just show me all of my aggressive frames. If I click on that button, it added some more. You see this? It added my True Prophecy in here. And if I scroll to the right, it's showing me even more. You can then start by doing a little bit of a process of elimination. Like maybe you say, this one sucks, that one's garbage. It's not going to dismantle them. It's just going to kind of hone in your focus and then recolor code based on the current set that you're comparing. All right, now I'm going to show you just a couple of tips when it comes to cleaning your vault. This search bar right here is your best friend. And if you're curious about anything, you just have to hit this little arrow right here and then go to the bottom where it says filters help. It'll pop this thing up and show you every single filter that you can possibly use. The list is endless and they explain what they do, but they're typically pretty self-explanatory. And before I do this, I want to make one thing abundantly clear. A lot of people delete gear that has low base stat without even thinking twice about it. That is a mistake. Crafting the perfect build is all about that lucky combination across all of your 4 pieces of gear. Let's take a look at these gauntlets right here. Their total base stat is 58. Dim shows me the plus 12 that I got from masterworking. That's all of these orange plus 2s across the board. And then it also shows me that plus 10 because I have a recovery mod that's currently slotted on it. Let's look at my build again. You can see that I have 4 wasted stats in mobility, 1 on recovery, and 2 on strength. Now, what if my helmet was a 63 and then I got rid of 4 mobility so it showed up as a 59 base stat? So many people would dismantle that because they see it's less than 60. But in this case, that exact stat distribution would have been just what I needed. So what I'll say to you is that I've been doing this for a long time, and after each season, they seem to be dropping better and better gear. I think most of us are aware of that, and I've come to the conclusion on making tons of builds in the Loadout Optimizer that anything 57 and lower, you can safely get rid of if you have a lot of gear. Now, I said I saved a lot of gear to show you all about this, right? So let's click on that filter and let's type in base stat. I don't want to look at any of these individually just yet, so I'm actually going to write total. And when you hit tab, it's going to give you a bunch of options that work with that current filter that you've typed in. I want to know all of the gear that has a base stat total less than or equal to 57. Hit enter, bingo. Here's all of the gear that I could safely get rid of. And if I'm curious how much room that's going to free up in my vault, it tells you right there 135 items I've been hanging on to. Now, how do I dismantle all of these? I can try and drag them one by one like this, and I can switch my screen back to the game, dismantle it, but that'd take me 10 years. So first I want to mass tag them. I'm going to hit these 3 dots up here, and I'm going to hit tag as junk. That has now done a bulk tag to 135 items, and they all have this symbol on them. Then what I can do is click on my character's 3 dots and hit transfer search. I'm making Dim do all of this work for me. It's slowly getting rid of all of those things that I had in my inventory and putting all of the ones that I want from the vault into that character, so that next time I log on, I can just blitz through all of these items. And it's worth noting that it doesn't touch your equipped gear. So if you're doing this in between Crucible matches or something, it's not going to F that up. All right, now let's take it one step further. You can have multiple rules. I want to see what gear do I have that's greater than 57, having a really low recovery of 6. And I say 6 because I have had builds where I have one piece of gear that has maybe 8 or 10 recovery while the others have really high recovery, but I've never successfully made a build with pieces that have 6 or less. I have another 48 pieces that, based on my style of play, are completely useless. And if you want to learn more about this, or you feel like you're still a bit confused on what pieces of gear are good versus bad, the second dim video that I made 6 to 8 months ago was all around that subject, comparing low base versus high base and how to decide which ones are best. The link is below in the description. All right, there's 2 more things I want to show you in the inventory tab. You'll see down here, there's farming mode. For those of you that don't know, when you have a full postmaster, let's say you had 2 exotic engrams in there at the bottom. If you got 2 blues to drop and your character was full, it would send those 2 blues to the postmaster and just delete your exotic engrams. It does not have a priority system at all. It's first in, first out. When this is enabled, it will make sure that your character at all times has 1 slot available, no matter what. If you have 8 out of 9 and then you get a primary to drop, it will instantly manage that piece and move it to the vault, or it'll shift things around between your characters if your vault is getting full. And the entire premise behind it is so that you can just crush out a bunch of activities and not being worried about your postmaster. All right, the second thing I wanted to show you was in the beta version only. So you can see that it's blue, and I'm in my browser because I haven't actually installed this one. But the piece I want to show you is this right here. It says inventory mode beta. That's showing me what my current view is. But if I click on it, it'll switch it to active mode, and it's showing me my Titan. I can open up these things on the left-hand side. It'll show me everything that I've got going on right now. So I've got my character, got my vault, and then I've got my bounties that I can hover over. You can click on them. And then just a heads up, if you click on maximize power, that will transfer all of the highest things I showed you at the beginning onto this character and equip it. So if you like your current build, don't hit that button. These next 3 sections are going to be really quick. And I just want to mention that if you find this helpful or you're enjoying the video, be sure to subscribe and turn the notifications on if you want to be notified when I post my next series of videos. And lastly, word on the street says that if a video has a good number of likes, the YouTube algorithm will actually give a fuck and try and share it. But anyways, let's just get onto the progress tab. The progress tab is kind of like a big to-do list. I've clicked on my hunter because he's less than 1260, and if I go under milestones and challenges and click on these things, it'll tell you what it's going to drop. This one's telling me those 7 wins in comp is going to give me a +0 powerful gear, which means it's going to give me powerful gear that drops at my current light level. But if I do my 3 weekly quick play matches for that pinnacle gear, it's telling me it's a +2 pinnacle gear. Now back to my Titan where all these bounties are, you can see these little headers up here. This is pretty darn neat, and I don't know it super well yet, but the whole idea around it is to help you with efficiency. I don't know how many times I have bounties that technically overlap without me knowing. For example, maybe I have to get pulse rifle kills, but I also need to get void weapon kills. I find I'm constantly checking my quest tab in the middle of a strike or whatever it is that I'm doing just to kind of see how I can optimize. Oh, I need an arc sidearm and a void pulse rifle to maximize the most amount of bounties. Well, that's what they're trying to achieve here. Not some kind of expert with this, but so far what I've liked about it is whenever I have those elemental efficiencies that I can gain. The vendors tab is essentially everything that you can go and get, whether it's items from Xur, things that you can buy for silver, or maybe even some of the bounties that are available that you haven't picked up yet. Not really going to dive into all of this. It's pretty self-explanatory. Going to the records section, this is just a big list of everything that you've done, but I want to bring your attention to one specific thing, and that's the exotic catalysts. I actually kind of think it belongs more in progress, but who cares? It's here. This tells you what catalysts you have and what sort of progress you have on them. Like Sturm Catalyst. Oh my god, I really need this because the Sturm kind of sucks without the catalyst, and I'm trying to do a hand cannon review on it, for God's sakes. Last up is the Organizer. This feature is pretty new to me, but it seems extremely powerful. I'm going to run through a couple of the basics and then let you figure some things out on your own. Maybe you can teach us a thing or two in the Discord. This is like a giant line list of everything that you have. Let's say I want to look at my weapons, specifically the hand cannons. Now listing every single hand cannon that I have in the game, along with some additional info like the power level, element, archetype, perks, all that good stuff. And the real beauty comes with the column selection. If you click enabled columns, you can choose what you want to see. Like maybe I don't care about the current power limit because I know I can infuse it as long as it isn't sunset. If I scroll down, maybe I want to see the base stats instead. And then you can actually sort by whatever you want. Hold the shift key and click on a cell to filter items. You can actually sort by more than one. So now maybe I want to do range. So this is kind of a way for me to say, all right, sweet, I want to look at my hand cannons that do 92 impact, and I want to sort by the highest range possible. And then on top of that, I want to sort by the next highest stability. You go down the list, and that can be kind of a way for you to find what you think is the best thing yet. The only problem with this is that you can't change perks on the go. Like right now, this thing has steady hand, and maybe I wanted to see how it would compare if I put hit mark on it instead. And then on top of all of this, you can go and use the filter and say, well, let me just see which hand cannons I have that have the perk rangefinder. So if I do that, now it's only showing me every single gun that has rangefinder in the hand cannon category. And if I'm lucky, the Hawk Moon will appear for me fairly soon. Just want to quickly mention that yes, you could do that same thing here. Let's say I go up here and type in perk rangefinder. It will also highlight all of the guns that have rangefinder. And then on top of that, I could probably do is hand cannon. So this also does that. It's just for people who prefer to see something in a line list. But now I want to show you some of the stuff when it comes to armor. And here you'll see some different information. It's kind of just another way to transpose the info from the grid style into a line list style. Here's all of those gear stats. Remember I was saying I want to really heavily favor recovery and maybe intellect, or I don't want to favor mobility on my Titan specifically, but you can do a custom total. I'm going to hit enable columns, scroll down a little bit and go down to the custom totals. You'll see that it has a white check mark. That means it's enabled, which makes sense. It's sitting right here in front of my face. I can click on the exact perks I care about. Let's click on recovery and intellect and maybe resilience just for shits and giggles. So I click out of there and now it's going to show me what's the highest total across those three stats. Now I'm going to hold shift and hit this custom total button and bingo. It's showing me that I have 3 helmets that add up to 50 in those 3 alone. The problem with this function right now, which I'd like to bring up in Dim's Discord, which kind of contradicts the reason the Loadout Optimizer is so good. I don't want to have to play around with all my mods and all my gear. I want to just be able to compare it from a base stat perspective. But either way, I wanted to raise awareness on this because it could be useful for other things, like what pieces of armor can I equip a very specific mod on maybe. You can use a lot of these columns to your advantage, plus the filtering system to figure that stuff out very quickly. And then last but not least for this section, you can just click on whatever pieces of armor you want to maybe mark or tag, keep, junk, infuse, favorite, all that good stuff. You can mass lock things or bulk unlock things. And the coolest damn thing I learned was that you can have this thing embedded right within your Steam app. So for those of you on PC, you don't need a second monitor or deal with alt tabbing. You can literally just use the in-game Steam shift tab function to open this thing up while you're playing. Go to the Dim website so that it opens within the Chrome browser, copy the address bar at the top, open up your Steam application, hit the Steam button on the top left-hand corner and go to settings. At the bottom, you'll see web browser, click on that, and it'll have a website there by default, like mine is google.com. Replace that with the address that you just copied moments ago and hit OK. Restart your game if you had it open, but otherwise fire it up. And while you're in game, use whatever command you have set for Steam's in-game pop-up, which is Shift Tab by default. At the bottom, you'll see web browser, click on that, and you've essentially set Dim as your homepage, so it'll just be open right there. You can expand the window to whatever size you want. You can move things around, Shift Tab, and you're back in the game. Again, if you are a Dim developer and you're watching this, thank you so much for the time and work that your team puts into this. And I'd like to wrap wrap this video up by talking about how to support Dim. I am not on their team. I do not make money off of this. I just think that I currently support my favorite streamers on Twitch or YouTube because I like their content and I want them to keep doing what they're doing. And it wasn't until I thought of it like that, I use Dim more than I watch any stream on any platform. So I'm finally a monthly backer for them, and I'm sorry it took me so long to think of that. Cheers to everyone watching the video, and if you're getting a holiday break, I hope you guys enjoy it, and I look forward to making more content for you all.